always focus on the business first. The technology, there's so many different things that we can choose, but I want to make sure that anything that we decide on is really going to benefit the business. For me, I like to kind of join as many meetings as possible and just kind of sit in the background, virtual or otherwise, and just absorb, listen to how that communication happens. What decisions are really important? Who is kind of speaking up and really running? Who are my key stakeholders? Those are all interesting points of information. I also want to know, what is the vision for the company? Where do they think they're going to be in 18 months or 3 years? I'll also really consider, where do I see that particular industry or other industries similar to it? Where do I see that going and growing? And how is technology being adopted, or how is technology evolving to support some of those industries? All of that comes into play when I'm considering, okay, what accounting software might we choose, or what time tracking software might we choose? It might seem a little bit, overly ambitious, but really all of that really comes into play when making sometimes a very significant investment in software.
Welcome to Biz Help for You, the show that saves you the expensive learning curve by providing advice from industry experts in every facet of the entrepreneurial journey. Too many small businesses collapse. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 20% fail within their first year, and less than 35% make it to their 10th anniversary. The goal of this podcast is to change that statistic. So if you're interested in learning more to be a successful entrepreneur, tune in today.
Now, let me tell you a little bit about my guest today. Brian is a husband, father, technologist, and enthusiastic adventurer with a strong technical background in software engineering, cloud computing, and cybersecurity. His expertise lies in serving as a technical advisor, assisting CTOs and CEOs in making informed technical decisions for their organizations. Brian empathizes with the technology-related challenges that leaders encounter and adopts a pragmatic approach to deliver tangible results that significantly impact business performance. With a deep understanding of the technology landscape and experience working with both startups and established organizations, he offers valuable insights and guidance to support strategic decision-making. You can benefit from his practical and informed perspective on technology, helping you navigate the ever-evolving tech landscape and make the right choices for your business. So, Brian, welcome to the show.
Candy, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm looking forward to this topic too. And I know some people are, completely afraid of technology. Some love it. And there may be some kind of falling in the middle of that. So I know this discussion will be very informative. But before I get to questions on the topic, I'd love for you just to share a little bit more about how you even became involved in the technology realm.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. My career path towards technology was not a straight one by any means. I actually started out in a field that's so far different from technology, it's almost not even funny. So I got my undergraduate degree and went into the workforce as an outdoor guide. So I would take people whitewater rafting and skiing and that sort of thing. And then eventually made my way back to graduate school. And that's where I found my love for technology. And from there, just went headfirst into it and have been working in technology for well over 15 years now.
Well, I love hearing how people get into it. So it is kind of interesting that you were the kind of the outdoor activity kind of thing, and then now it's technology. But I think too, technology can be an adventure too, right? I think there's so many challenges, especially if we are non-technical. So what would you say to someone who's running a company, maybe they need to be using technology for their business, but they're afraid, or they think, well, I'm not good at technology. I don't know how to really use it effectively. Like, what would you tell them?
I think most organizations that I've seen and been a part of are, even if they don't consider themselves technology organizations, they really are. They're technology enabled, even if they aren't writing their own software day in and day out. And a lot of organizations can really benefit from what technology brings to them. It can really supercharge their workforce, enable them to work across borders, and really change the way that their business operates and the way that they're able to serve their clients. So I really see technology as an enabler. And I think if
Hmm.
we focus on that and not just the I don't understand technology, we can
Hmm.
really start to see the benefits of adopting different pieces of technology across our ecosystems.
Hmm. Well, I agree with you. I mean, whether we are in what we think might be a technology type of industry or not, we have to use technology. We're using computers, we're using online software. We're having employees clock in or clock out. I remember when I first started working my, first real job a long time ago, their whole job was adding up time cards. We used to have to punch in and punch out, and they had to sit there and add up all of those numbers for every employee every day. And now it's so easy because the computer can just give you the number. They worked 40 hours this week, or they had this much overtime, and it saves a lot of time. Right? So I think we do have to embrace it, but I do also understand why sometimes people are still like afraid because it's complicated, or we don't always understand how everything works. So if we are going to be looking for software to make things more efficient, you're going to enable us, right, to do our jobs better. Like, do you have some tips on how to even find the right software that we should be using in our industries, our companies?
There's so many great softwares out there, and there are also some that aren't so great, and it can be really difficult to choose. I always start with what is the problem that I'm trying to solve, or what
Hmm.
is the business capability that I'm trying to really superpower or charge. And that's where, once I understand what it is I'm trying to do, then I can start to look at what my options are. And really, it can come down to what are the capabilities of certain packages or softwares? How do they integrate with other tools that we already have within our ecosystem? How many users will be using that platform? What's the reputation of that particular software out in the larger world?
Hmm.
Is it a brand new startup and I'm going to be trusting my business on something that may go away overnight? Or is it an established brand with a lot of great, awards and customer support and those sorts of things? I think all of that really weighs into it. And unfortunately, a lot of us, if we don't look at it from a strategic business objective point of view, we might only be making the decision based on price. And unfortunately, a lot of times, software included, you get what you pay for. And so it can be really valuable to spend a little bit more time and a little more money to get the tool that really does solve as much for your business as possible.
Hmm. Well, working with small business entrepreneurs too, I know that sometimes, as you're saying, there's different things that work together. So maybe you have to have a timekeeping system, and then you have a bookkeeping system, and then maybe you have a POS system to sell, the products to your customers. And then you have this huge tech stack that you don't always know how it's going to work well together, or is it even going to work together? And, all of that too. And it could become very confusing knowing exactly like what you should be using. So is there like a resource even where someone can go to figure out like what really could go well together to make it more streamlined for them? Or is it just kind of you have to try it out and see what happens?
I wish I could point you to the resource that tells us everything we need to know. Unfortunately, I haven't run across it. I think in many ways we have to try it and find out
Hmm.
and see if this is something that plays well together. Again, I think taking a step back and really understanding what am I trying to do? What am I trying to solve? And just kind of let our brain run free about the
Hmm.
numerous ways I might want to use this tool or other tools alongside it can really help in identifying the right package. And thankfully, a lot of the softwares that are out there and available today have really generous trial or
Hmm.
free tiers. So we can sign up for a lot of these packages, try them out for a week, and then see if they really work for us or not. I
Hmm.
really encourage folks to spend a bit more time on it. You know, 30 minutes or an hour just isn't enough to really identify if a tool is right for us or not.
Right. But sometimes as entrepreneurs, we have so many things on our plate and we're working such long hours. Sometimes even that little bit of time, they could be like, oh, wow, this is going to take a lot of effort, right, to figure out what works. I do know for myself, one time I did have the situation where I was using project management. It had been recommended by someone who'd used it for years. And at some point they just said, we're not charging enough to be able to stay in business and we're going to close down at this date. And so I actually had employees who were already using the software before test out different ones. So I looked into like what project management is out there, like which ones do we maybe want to consider because they do have features that we need. I had some things that were must-haves, and some nice to haves. Right.
Mhm.
And I had them test it and then they narrowed it down to 2 and then we ended up making a final decision. So I think sometimes we don't think as entrepreneurs to bring our team in to try it out as well, but that's another option as well.
Oh, absolutely. And for me, I'm working with a lot of teams and making very strategic decisions. I want to make sure that the tools that we're evaluating are going to be the right ones for the team, not the
Mhm.
ones that I think are neat or interesting or maybe have the best price tag, but really the
Mhm.
ones that are my team is going to adopt and really enjoy working with every day.
Mhm. So are there some maybe red flags that you could point out if we're looking at something and we're like, this may not actually be something we should be pursuing, whether it's like you said, how do we know if someone maybe is going to go out of business? We don't really know either, too. So maybe what are some of the things that you look for or that we should shy away from that might be red flags?
For me, I tend towards choosing a boring technology.
Mm.
Boring meaning that it's been around for more than a few months. It's been around for quite a while. It's adopted by other organizations of my
Mhm.
similar size or where
Mhm.
I think I will be going in the next 18 months to maybe 3 years. And if it really has the community support around it, if
Mhm.
I can go and find information about how do I do this thing with this tool, how easy is it for me to answer those questions? Because once I start adopting a technology, once I really get, all of my data and all of my teams using that piece of technology, I want to make sure I can continue to grow and leverage it to its highest ability. And so I really want to make sure that it can support me in those ways. Uh,
Mhm.
Usually, the flashier marketing websites for me is honestly a red flag because I can spend a lot of time looking really good from a marketing perspective, but
Mhm.
under the covers, the customer support, the stability of the system can all be go away.
Mhm. Well, that's one thing I've noticed recently too is a lot of software, they don't even have where you could call in for support any longer. It's you have to chat or you have to send a message, right? And if you are dealing with a challenge and you need to have it solved quickly, that part can become frustrating as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, what we're seeing a lot is higher priced tiers. That's where you can get the additional support. But for a lot of organizations, especially business focused software, they're going to have support in the same hours that they're expecting their customers to be using the software. So,
Mhm.
yeah, that can be certainly a challenge for sure.
Mhm. Well, and even talking about the hours that they're working too, a lot of technology I'm seeing now too is from other countries, right? And some of them can be on way different time zones. And I've seen too where sometimes they're not necessarily matching what we have in our, business too, because if they're now a global, marketing to all over the place too, they're not running their operations 24/7, right? So it could also be a challenge where maybe someone's time zone is 8 or 10 hours ahead of you and you have limited, time for that interaction. So I don't know if there's a way to easily solve that problem either, but that's something that I've also noticed over, with a few different things I've used myself.
No, it absolutely happens. I mean, I work with a number of technology teams that are based in Central and Eastern Europe. So they're easily 6 and 7 hours ahead of me. And
Mhm.
that could be a real challenge. Absolutely. So, we look at how can we augment the support with additional resources, education material,
Mhm.
chatbots that are much more intelligent can be really helpful in those times. But really, we have to pay people or find people that can kind of work with the time zones that our customers are in. So it's certainly a challenge, and it one to consider when you're really looking at different technologies.
Mhm. So obviously you're a technical advisor and you help people figure out, what might be the right thing for them too. So how do you go about that conversation with them, even to find out what their needs are and help them identify maybe what is the right thing for them to be using?
I really want to understand the business. I want to understand, how does the business make money? How do people communicate within the business? What's the culture? Uh, what are some of the ways that technology might help enable or empower this group? I always
Hmm.
focus on the business first. The technology, there's so many different things that we can choose, but I want to make sure that anything that we decide on is really going to benefit the business. For me, I like to kind of join as many meetings as possible and just kind of sit in the background, virtual or otherwise, and
Hmm.
just absorb, listen to how that communication happens. What decisions are really important? Who is kind of speaking up and really running? Who are my key stakeholders? Those are all interesting points of information. I
Hmm.
also want to know, what is the vision for the company? Where do they think they're going to be in 18 months or 3 years? I'll also really consider, where do I see that particular industry or other industries similar to it? Where do I see that going and growing? And how is technology being adopted, or how is technology evolving to support some of those industries? All of that comes into play when I'm considering, okay, what accounting software might we choose, or what time tracking
Hmm.
software might we choose? It might seem a little bit, overly ambitious, but really all of that really comes into play when making sometimes a very significant investment in software.
Hmm. Well, and there are some that are industry specific too, versus, like QBO could be, a lot of different people can use that theoretically too. So how do you, as a technical advisor, also understand specifically for their industry needs what might be better in terms of software? Like maybe this accounting software that's specific for your industry would be better than just like a general, software. Or, there's so many different things. Project management, maybe there's one that's specific for like construction versus like a general project management. So how do you even keep up to date with all of that so you can educate the business owners on what they should be using?
So I play with a lot of software. I sign up for as many trial subscriptions as I can, and just get in there and play around with it.
Hmm.
I also I like to work with the subject matter experts, with the
Hmm.
SMEs within that organization, and understand, how do they work? How do they operate day in and day out? Because it can be really challenging to adopt new software if it completely changes the way that we work and we
Right.
interact throughout our workday. So I can't force new processes on someone just to be able to adopt a new technology. I really want to find a technology that continues to support their process, if only
Hmm.
to encourage and empower their ability to work more efficiently and effectively.
Right. Well, even as you mentioned processes, I'm thinking a lot of businesses should have their processes written out and often don't. It's like in the owner's head, or maybe an employee kind of knows what they should be doing. Right. So, how do you help them also figure out then if their process maybe needs to be adapted some? Like, or do you then say, okay, we're going to use this software, but then you also have to spell out how you want your staff to use this effectively? Like, how do you go about basically teaching them how to create those processes to effectively use the software?
So the first thing I like to do is, I'll start with recording what it is that we're doing, just kind of walking through the steps in the process. And it will be long and cumbersome, and we'll fumble quite a bit. But in that, we start to identify what are those processes. And we might go
Hmm.
through this a few times. And then from there, we can take the video recording of how we went through this particular, series of steps, and turn that into documentation, or turn that
Hmm.
into short videos. Because really, for technology to be adopted, or even changes in processes, in order to share that with the team, we all absorb information in different ways and at different
Hmm.
times. So I have to use multiple different mediums to be able to convey that information. Some prefer it in writing, some prefer audio or video, some prefer just to be hands on and kind of walked through that process and then augmented with additional resources. And so I have to be able to support all of those different ways that we learn, as well as just identifying, again, taking it from the owner's head and out into something that I can now replicate and share with the team.
Hmm. Right, it's so important, and I've seen with my own team too, where some people really love to have those step-by-step written instructions, and some like to be able to watch. You go here and then you click here. So it's so true to have it in different ways so that your staff can use whatever is more effective for them, but also making sure it stays updated too, because I know software, they update it frequently, right? They'll have, now it's the newest thing, right? So sometimes those instructions then are not really up to date any longer. And then some steps maybe can't be followed. And so I guess there's those challenges of staying up to date with all of those software changes as well.
Oh, absolutely. There really is. And so for me, there's a few ways that I try and address that. Any documentation that we have about these are the processes that we take, all of those are living documents. And for
Hmm.
me, everyone in the organization has the ability to edit those documents, at least being able to comment on them. And we
Hmm.
build that into the culture where we encourage everyone to keep things up to date because we only all benefit from all of us working together to keep things up to date. I'll also leverage brand new people coming into the organization as we're going through the learning process and understanding, hey, this is how we do things here, or this is how we use this tool. I'll give that documentation to that new person and ask them to kind of follow what we already have in place.
Hmm.
And they do a great job at kind of quality assurance to say, hey, this has actually changed. The user interface on this particular platform has changed. It looks different. The menu has moved around. We can continue to keep things up to date so that as we're hiring, as we're bringing on new people, we're continuing to keep our documentation up to date and fresh.
Hmm. So, do you have any recommendations too on how to keep their data safe, right? I know a lot of times people are so afraid now of having things online because, maybe there'll be a hacker that can break in and, get information. So, do you have any tips maybe on the security?
I think it all comes down to the trust of the systems that we're bringing into our organization. And the benefit of being able to sign up for these platforms with the swipe of a credit card is also to our detriment because now
Hmm.
anyone in our organization that has a corporate credit card with a $10 limit can sign up for a new platform and start to send our data who knows where. I have
Hmm.
no idea what that organization or that software is doing with our data, how it's being leveraged, where it's being stored. And so this is a real risk. We
Hmm.
have to continually do audits of where are we spending money on what software packages, and then going in and investigating them. A lot of
Hmm.
organizations, especially highly regulated ones, have to go through a pretty rigorous vendor audit. So even if it's a $10 subscription, we'll have to go through, maybe many months of approvals to be able to make sure that this organization, this software that we're looking to adopt, is going to treat our data the way that we expect. So it's certainly a concern and one that I deal with pretty much every day.
Hmm. So if someone is listening and they're saying, well, I understand, like I need to be looking into some technology, or maybe I need to update my technology, but I don't want to have to do it, my own self. I want to have maybe a consultant come in and, help me figure out what is the best thing to do for my company. How do they identify who really should be that trusted advisor?
I think it really comes down to trust. It comes down to, have I found someone that I feel like has my best interests at heart, is going to really spend the time to understand my unique business, the characteristics of me and my team, and the challenges that we have, and then really help guide me through the process of identifying the right solution the right software, and help me to implement that. I think it's very much, I treat it very much like a kind of a dating relationship where we
Mm-hmm.
have to really be able to kind of gain that trust and continue to hone that trust over time. Unfortunately, there are a lot of consultants out there who are really excited about bringing in new technology or bringing in a new platform. And, I'm contacted every day by vendors and development teams who just want me to sell their services to my clients. And I had to make a rule a long time ago that no, I'm not going to push any particular development team or software package because I can't give an unbiased opinion when I'm working with my clients. So it really comes down to trust and having that best interest at heart.
Mm-hmm. Well, it could take some time, to develop that too. And so I guess what would be like a timeline maybe from the time that someone realizes like, yes, I need some help. I need to start looking. I need to have that conversation to actually identifying what would be the right software and implementing that. And I assume you'd also help them actually implement it, not just help them make the decision. Like maybe what might be, I know it might be hard to have quote unquote typical, but maybe what does that timeline look like?
Usually, that first month is when we're kind of learning about each other. I'm learning a lot about the business, who the stakeholders are, what the challenges are within the organization. That's usually going to be at least a month, sometimes 3 months. And then after that, we can start to make some decisions. We can start to look at what are the platforms that we might consider adopting. And that may be another 3 months before we're starting to implement. Now, for me, to say it's a 1 to 6 month process before we're starting to implement can be pretty long for some organizations. And for others, that might feel very fast. I want
Mm-hmm.
to really work with my clients and help to show that we're moving in the right direction, that our strategy here is to adopt the right technology at the right time and make sure that it fits well within the rest of our business goals. And so I would say ballpark, we would expect to see something in 3 to 6 months where we're starting to bring in a new technology. And again, there is a lot that is dependent in that the size of the organization, the maturity of the
Mm-hmm.
organization, how many people are involved, certainly all play into that speed.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. So I know we're coming close to the end of the time that we have together too. So I wanted to ask if you have an offer that you would like to share with our listeners. And also if people want more information, how can they connect with you?
Yeah, so to connect with me, I'm most active on LinkedIn. I encourage you to find me on there and reach out. I'm Brian Childress. I'm very active on there, posting daily. From there, my offer is out to anyone who's getting ready to go into maybe making a big technology decision, whether it's hiring a development team, hiring a freelancer, or considering adopting a new technology. I offer a free 30-minute call. There's a Calendly link on there. You can go ahead and schedule. My goal is to try and help as many companies make strong strategic decisions. I want to certainly offer that up to your listeners.
Well, thank you so much, Brian, for that. I'm sure the listeners will appreciate your offer. And I appreciate your being on the show and talking on this topic. I know technology can sometimes seem very overwhelming for those who are running their businesses. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
And to the listener, if you enjoyed today's topic and you want to hear additional information, you can find access to exclusive content in the show notes. Thank you for tuning in today. Would you please share this episode with those you know and leave a review on your favorite platform? And if you find our show informative, would you consider being a financial sponsor to help me continue my mission to educate business owners? A link is located in the episode description, and no amount is too small. I'd really appreciate your support. If you are interested in connecting with our guest and receiving the offer they had to share, a link to our resource page is in the show notes. Finally, if you have any bookkeeping or payroll needs, reach out to us at 310 534-5577 or contact@abandp.com. My team and I are eager to assist you. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next time. Have a terrific day.